avoiding the already dastardly trail, and there was fog that not fog, but a cloud had began to engulf the mountain on that day. So we ran down about 3.5 miles from the top, just below timberline, into a lonesome stand of thousand-year-old bristlecone pines. And these usually go unnoticed during the race. And my son said, "Dad, let's just keep going. I feel great." He wanted to keep running downhill, not realizing how hard it was going to be to have to turn around and run back up. So he might have been feeling a little too good for his own britches there. But with wisdom of doing that race a few times and preparing for it, I said we better turn around now and start heading back up, because we're down to about 11,000 feet at timberline. And I told him this is where the real race is going to start on Sunday, is right here. So we turned around and headed back to the top, but not quite as quickly as we had gone down. And close to the top, we approached one of just a few people we saw on the trail, and I challenged my son, saying, "Let's push ourselves and pass that guy." And well, it was really a fool's errand at that point. And no matter how fast we moved, we couldn't close the distance with this fellow. And he would just glance back at us, and with what looked like very little effort, he sped up. And when we got to the top, I struck up a conversation with this guy and found out that he was one of France's elite mountain runners, and he'd been sent to the States to compete in the 11th annual Mountain Running Championships held during the Pikes Peak Ascent. They do it different places every year. And so there's people from all over the world that were going to compete in this. So to prepare for this race, Laurent had given up his apartment in southern France. And he ran in as many mountain races as he could afford. And he tapped into his life savings, and he listened to every word his coach told him. And his coach was the old USSR marathon coach from back in the day. And he lives in Malta, and so they communicate via phone and email. And if the coach says to rest a day, he'll rest a day. If the coach says to eat something, he'll eat it. If the coach says to drink or not to drink, he does exactly what the coach says, because this guy's proven himself. And if the coach says to run 20 miles uphill, then he'll run 20 miles uphill and have to find a way back down. And he does everything this man tells him to do. Laurent even bought himself a pair of these racing shoes that were designed solely for running uphill. And, in his thick French accent, he took off one of his feather-light red shoes and raised it in the air, and he said, "These shoes are not too good for running downhill. And no, 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 only up, only up." And then he put his shoe back on, and it was just funny being around this guy. But he fully committed himself to compete at that level. And he told us that to run at this level, it's not a hobby, it's a complete lifestyle. And I think if we have a situation in our life that isn't where we want it to be, it's our major competition, then we should put all our life energy, or most of it, into trying to resolve that one situation, be it a job, be it health, be it whatever. Doesn't matter. And it's got to take precedence over everything else. It's just how life is. If you want to, we love reading about these elite athletes, but we're usually not willing to put in the same energy in our own situation. There has to be a parallel. They're successful because they believe. And so it takes precedence over your love life, he said, over your diet, over your time, over your bank account, over all your relationships. It's over everything. To be at the top, this elite level of running, a person must reshape their body, their mind, and their lifestyle, he said. And that's just coming out of this little Frenchman's mouth. I can't do the accent as good as him. But Dr. Oz, a physician and TV personality, said, "Your genetics load the gun. your lifestyle pulls the trigger. You know, my son picked up Laurent from his motel and went to the top later in the week for more altitude training. I couldn't go because I had to work. And when they got to the top, Laurent told my son, do not try to keep up with me. You cannot. And then he took off and started running down. But he said to run your own race. And at one point they were running together and they passed Team Slovakia. And they all had their uniforms on. They're all running together. And Laurent, after they passed this group, 5 or 6 people, he told Adam, he looked back at them and he goes, they are not ready. They did not acclimatize. See how tired they are. And he goes, I will beat them. You know, and so he already knew, and these guys were all checking each other out. You know, I saw a guy from Australia. He was probably the sole member. And he was up there acclimatizing, and he had his notebook, and he had pages of his plan for running this race. I didn't know people did that. You know, they had the whole thing mapped out. It was page after page. I was just watching him flip, and then close his eyes and flip and close his eyes, trying to visualize every movement. And Laurent had the day before run from his hotel in central Colorado Springs all the way up to the top of Pikes Peak, just for training. So this guy was serious. And he ended up coming in 14th place overall, you know, so he didn't medal, but he was super happy when Adam called him. And he said, I did my PB, personal best. And he said, plus I beat everybody from the Mount Blanc race. You know, the people who beat him in a French race, he beat everybody in every one of them he passed this time. So he goes, when I go back, I will win. You know, so this is just a step towards the ultimate, you know, goal, probably winning next year. But I thought it was a lot of fun. See, before that moment of speaking with this guy, I had no idea of the commitment these athletes make to compete. I thought I did, but I really didn't, because I'd never trained around or with an Olympian or an elite runner before of any sort. And you know, some of you were college or professional athletes. Some of the people listening, and so you understand what it really took to get to that level. Elite in any of your fields. Doesn't matter what it is. Being in sales, you know, being a builder, whatever it is. Doesn't matter. Machinist. And but if you want to compete with the elites, we must live like they live. Must learn to believe like they believe. Have the same mindset is true with believing. It works. Now I'm going to read from 1 Corinthians chapter 9. We're going to read 19 through 27. I'm going to read it from the Message because I can. And sometimes I like the Message because it just talks in plain terms. I mean, I've read King James for so many years. It's just nice to get a different perspective from different versions, and this is a good one. Even though I am free of the demands and expectations of everyone, I have voluntarily become a servant to any and all in order to reach a wide range of people. Religious, non-religious, meticulous, moralist, loose-living immoralist, the defeated, the moralized, whoever. I didn't take on their way of life. I kept my bearings in Christ, but I entered their world and tried to experience things from their point of view. I've become just about every sort of servant there is in my attempt to lead those I meet to a God-saved life. I did all this because of the Message. I didn't just want to talk about it. I wanted to be in on it. I like that. Verse 24, you've all been to the stadium and seen the athletes race. Everyone runs. One wins. Run to win. All good athletes train hard. They do it for a gold medal that tarnishes and fades. You're after one that's gold eternally. I don't know about you, but I'm running hard for the finish line. I'm giving it everything I got. You see, no sloppy living for me. I'm staying alert and in top condition. I'm not going to get caught napping, telling everyone else all about it, and then missing out myself. I love the words, I didn't just want to talk about it, I wanted to be in on it. You know, too many people call themselves believers, but they do more talking than believing. You know, they may take class after class, book after book, seminar after seminar, and they still are basically the same place they were before. Got to be a problem. But it's not with God, it's with our own selves, our own believing. You see, they know how to believe, but they're not willing to make that much of a lifestyle change. And that's the important point of Laurent. It's really just, it's that lifestyle. It's changing our lifestyle in order to get to the place that we want to get, or at least head there. Thomas Leonard, who's a coach, he said, a lifestyle is what you pay for. A life is what pays you. See, if we want to build elite level believing, we have to go at it like elite athletes. It's just an extreme focus and an action towards that. Like I say all the time, do something every day to better your situation. Every day. Doesn't matter if you don't have it right now. Head that direction. Do something. It requires full focus, a training plan, and a complete lifestyle change. Just think, if you don't change your lifestyle, will anything really change in your life? It can't. It can't. Prayer is only for setting our believing or resetting our believing. God already knows what you need. Prayer is for you and for others around you. Now we're going to learn. So the lesson of Laurent is to fully commit yourself to reaching your goal. Fully commit yourself to reaching your goal. He did. And he reached his goal. You know, he beat his personal best. That's what he wanted to do. So the lesson of the Olympians. Find the coach you believe in and who believes in you. So we ran into Brandon at the same running store that he worked at a year prior. And that was in Colorado Springs. And to my surprise, he recognized us from last year. And it turned out that he and my son stayed in touch on the Facebook over the past year. And a year ago, Brandon had been an injured college runner. And now he was training for the next Olympics. And I was very happy for this kid. And we met up with Brandon and his friend Bill at an open mic night the Monday before our race. And Josephine and I bought food for these super slim kids. You know, they look like they needed a little meat on their bones. So Josephine can't help feeding these people. And so Brandon called, maybe it's free food, but Brandon called his girlfriend, who was also an Olympic, or she was an Olympic sprinter. And he asked her to come out to hear him sing and to meet us. And she did. And this girl didn't have the lithe body of a long-distance runner. You know, she was flat out muscular. And her shoulders were wide and her waist was narrow and her legs were powerful. And her arms had definition and muscle. It was such a difference between her and her boyfriend. And which you need for running fast. You need that strength. And but the marathoners don't want that weight. They don't want that excess poundage. So Josephine and I offered to buy her an adult beverage and some food, like we did her boyfriend and his running buddy. And at that exact second, her coach walked up to her and handed her a glass of water. And I thought, what the, where did this guy come from? You know, and he didn't seem, she didn't seem the least bit surprised that he just popped up and handed her a glass of water. But it turns out this man was the coach of all three of these kids. And I had seen him glancing at us from a distance while we were sitting there talking about the past hour, but I had no idea who he was. He actually owns that club. But he's concerned about his athletes. And so apparently he didn't want her eating or drinking anything. But he didn't mind the marathoners doing it. So I don't know the difference, but it's a totally different sport. And during this night of food, music, and drink, I heard one saying over and over, every one of them said, "My coach said this," or "My coach said that," or "My coach did this," and "My coach does that." And the conversation kept revolving around their coach, which I found quite curious because kids don't want to be told what to do, young people. But these people did, because they knew this guy knew how to win, because he's an Olympic coach. So they put their full trust in him. I think how we sometimes will have a doctor. Well, you trust him, you believe, you put your trust in that guy, or a friend, with a situation. It doesn't matter. It's the same. You got to extrapolate the lesson out of this. None of us are Olympians. Well, maybe you are, but I'm not. But what they each knew that in order to compete at an Olympic level, they needed a coach who could get them there. They needed and they wanted guidance. They needed and wanted encouragement. And they needed and wanted an ever watchful eye, of which this guy did. I didn't realize coaches were that much into their athletes. So I learned a lesson. Bill McCartney, he's a football coach, he said, all coaching is taking a player where he can't take himself. And that's what any good friend should do. That's what a parent should do. That's what a doctor should do. That's what anybody who's helping people should do. Take them where they just can't go themselves. If you're in a position of authority, that's our job as humans, is bring out the best in the people around us. When I was doing a little research about coaching from a spiritual perspective, the names Barnabas and Paul kept coming up. So many Christians love this, apparently. And it took me back to a similar teaching I'd heard some 25 years ago by someone who's listening today. And so we're going to start in Acts chapter 9, verse 1. And this is also from the Message. And in verse 1, it says, all this time Saul was breathing down the necks of the master's disciples, out for the kill. See, something was about to change. God, the great coach, saw Paul's heart, his potential, and his mistraining. And God knew his potential. And there's very few places in the Bible where it mentions that Jesus Christ appeared to or spoke with anybody after he ascended. This is one of the few that it's ever happened to. And one was in Acts 9, where Paul was on his way to Damascus to capture and imprison some Christians. And the headlines read much the same today concerning the deadly persecution of Christians in that part of the world. Same stuff's still going on. And Jesus' interaction with Paul was brief but significant. Now watch how he gets coached along by a few people. So verse 3, and he set off, and when he got to the outskirts of Damascus, he was suddenly dazed by a blinding flash of light. As he fell to the ground, he heard a voice, Saul, Saul, why are you out to get me? And he said, who are you, Master? And he said, I'm Jesus, the one you're hunting down. I want you to get up and enter the city, and in the city you'll be told what to do next. The coaching starts now. Paul's at a point in his life where he knows he needed a change. He was ready for that change. His first coach was Jesus Christ himself. And the next coach was a fearless man named Ananias. And he was told by God to find Paul and to minister healing to him. And he did, and Paul was healed. And Paul started his new training regimen right now. So go to verse 19, and it says, Saul spent a few days getting acquainted with the Damascus disciples, but then went right to work, wasting no time preaching in the meeting places that this Jesus was the Son of God. And they were caught off guard by this, and not at all sure that they should trust him. And they kept saying, isn't this the man who wreaked havoc in Jerusalem among the believers? And didn't he come here to do the same thing? Arrest us and drag us off to jail in Jerusalem for sentencing by the high priest? See, their suspicions didn't slow Saul down for even a minute. His hometown, his momentum up to now, he plowed straight into the opposition, disarming the Damascus Jews and trying to show them that this Jesus was the Messiah. That's the end of verse 22. See, Paul's new teammates didn't trust him or believe in him. I mean, I don't know if I would either. If one guy had, just imagine an Al-Qaeda operative or an ISIS operative saying he's converting to Christianity and, coming to your house in full garb. It'd be sort of weird. Coming to your group, you see, your job. And after this, verse 23, after this had gone on quite a long time, some Jews conspired to kill him, but Saul got wind of it. They were watching the city gates around the clock so they could kill him. Then one night the disciples engineered his escape by lowering him over the wall in a basket. Now, mind you, these attackers are not in Israel. They're in Syria, Damascus. It's just northeast of the Sea of Galilee, near Mount Hermon, I think we talked about a couple of weeks ago. So Paul's about to meet the man who will be his mentor and protector and trainer for the next few months or years. Barnabas, the coach, found his protege. And in verse 27, it says, back in Jerusalem, he tried to join the disciples, but they were all afraid of him. Now, Jerusalem, where he was sent from, he was well known, and they were afraid of him. They didn't trust him one bit. Then Barnabas took him under his wing. He introduced him to the apostles and stood up for him. Now, how weird would that be for these apostles also? And to hear that Jesus had talked to this guy. They had all talked to Jesus Christ at some point, but probably not since, the resurrection or right after. So he introduced him to the apostles and stood up for him, told them how Saul had seen and spoken to the master on the Damascus road, and how in Damascus itself he had laid down his life on the line with his bold preaching in Jesus' name. Now, Barnabas must have been an amazing fellow with an eye for talent and the tongue of a diplomat to convince these apostles about Paul. Verse 28, and after that he was accepted as one of them, going in and out of Jerusalem with no questions asked, uninhibited as he preached in the Master's name. But he ran afoul of a group called the Hellenists, and he'd been engaged in a running argument with them who plotted his murder. When his friends learned of the plot, they got him out of town, took him to Caesarea, and then shipped him off to Tarsus, where he was from, which is just across the corner of the Mediterranean Sea. And things calmed down after that, and the church had smooth sailing for a while, all over the country, Judea, Samaria, Galilee. The church grew. They were permeated with a deep sense of reverence for God. The Holy Spirit was with them, strengthening them. They prospered wonderfully. See, when Barnabas teamed up with Paul, the world changed. It's the power of teamwork and choosing the right coach, or the right coach choosing you. And these two men, coach and trainee, did more for the movement of truth than any duo had ever really done before, except for maybe John the Baptist and Jesus Christ. And so a coach should see what the athlete cannot. See, a coach pulls the best out of an individual. A friend pours the best in. We need to be both with each other. And this player-coach relationship lasted until Acts 15:39, where, as Bullinger puts it regarding Barnabas, quote, he here disappears from the history, end of quote. And the student was now more advanced than the teacher. And Barnabas is seldom heard about again in Scripture. And he's written out of history in Acts. So it's pretty sad. And it's wild that most Christian writers say that Barnabas cheered Paul on from the sidelines. That Paul got so good that he would just applaud him from the sidelines. He was so much better than Barnabas. You see, that he was Paul's biggest supporter, they say. But that's not what the Word says. You know, people just blindly drink from each other's research and pass it on as their own. You know, spiritual plagiarism, or should I say spiritual inbreeding, has severely weakened those seeking to be coached spiritually. As I've been studying these past 3 or 4 years more than I ever had before, I'm realizing so much research, when you track it back, it goes to 1 or 2 men back in the 1800s or early 1900s who did something, and everybody draws from that same pool. And then if you go against that, there's no way you can be as smart as this guy, because look how many people have pulled from that. It's flat out crazy. If it was true, why is Christianity so weak? Why aren't we walking with the power of God in Christ? You know, why don't we see signs, miracles, and wonders more often? We should. We should be able to do the same works that he did and greater works. So what's holding us back? Part of it is we've been mistrained. When I was with those Olympians, those not the French guy, but the 3 Olympians, I said, so I suppose you train on the mountain, don't you, to really get some good altitude? And they said, oh no, our coach won't allow us to touch the mountain. I said, what? What better exercise could that be? He said, running a marathon, the muscles for a marathon are totally different than what you'd use to running up a mountain. He said, it'll hurt us and not help us. Which again, that blew my mind. What I thought would be great for them would actually hurt them at that elite level. It wouldn't hurt me, because my time's going to be the same. I'm a middle of the pack guy, you know. But when you're elite, it's one little movement can make such a big difference. One thing you eat could change things. I know there's a thing here called the incline, which is 1 mile of torture. And it's just these steps. It's super hard. And the best I've ever done it in is 33 minutes. Yeah. Well, pretty good when you think that the guy who holds the record did it in 18 minutes. And Apollo Ono could do it consistently in 20 minutes. And that's what he did for his leg strength. You know, when he was one of the Olympians, he'd do that almost every day. I'd do it maybe once every couple of weeks. You know, but it's just, for him, it was good for the ice racing or whatever, speed skating. But it wouldn't be good for the marathoners. It just put on a different kind of muscle. You know, you'll find that different places hurt on you when you do the marathon than when you just run flatland. It's just different. It's a different set of muscles. And that's what I'm saying. Spiritually, we need to be coached. Now, you can be coached on your own by study, by reading, but be careful what you're putting into your head. Just because somebody has said this is true doesn't really mean it's true. Just because they say it's best for you doesn't mean it's best for you. It's hard to do that. We don't think we're smart enough. Well, I want to tell you, you are smart enough. Read some of the comments of the young people on the web and what they're talking about modern Christianity. It's not anything like what you see out there. It's not anything what most of us live. They're trying to get back to the guts and rudimentary foundation of it, which is really love, which is really forgiveness, which is being committed from the heart. It's not all the man-made forms of religion. And we all think, oh, we're not religious. Well, you do the same thing over and over and over. It's either religious or insane, if you're expecting a different outcome, right? It's one of the two, but I guess maybe they're the same. Religion and insanity. Lou Holtz, a football coach, said, "Coaching is nothing more than eliminating mistakes before you get fired." Yeah, whatever. Verse 37, Barnabas wanted to take John. No, here's the end. This shows that this inbreeding. Barnabas never could really get away from the Judean religion. Just like so many Christians have such trouble breaking away from their church, breaking away from the thoughts of their church. It's hard. Like I told you before, that one woman from a very religious sect of Christianity, I went to their church a couple of times for weddings and stuff like that because they were in my networking group, and she called me up. She goes, "Mark, you gotta pray for my son. You know, I want him to come back to God." And I said, I just had hung up with talking with this kid for 30 minutes, and all we did is talk about the word. And I said, "Eileen," I said, "I just got off the phone with your son, and we had a great conversation about God." I said, "What you're really saying is you want your child to come back to your church." I said, "Coming to your church and coming back to God are not the same things." But most churches think they are. And if you feel like that if you don't go to that particular group, even here, or you won't get what you need, I mean, it's craziness. You know, be your own person. Be the greatest participant in your own healing, in your own growth, in your own coaching. You have to be your own best coach. We all know how to do it, but we get lazy. You know, we want to take the escalator up, you know, to the top of the incline, you know. So here it is. This is when the break happened. Acts 15:37 through 39 from the Message. Barnabas wanted to take John along, the John nicknamed Mark, but Paul wouldn't have him. He wasn't about to take along a quitter who, as soon as the going got tough, he jumped ship on them in Pamphylia. Tempers flared, and they ended up going their separate ways. And that was it. Sometimes you have to break ties with somebody who's holding you back. You know, it's just the way it goes. You got to find the group you click with. And you may find that in your life, it may be different groups as you age and mature, or multiple groups at the same time. It doesn't matter. Whatever it takes for you to help your belief and get to the point you can receive. It just doesn't matter. See, a good coach is as committed to his athlete as his athlete is to him. Students find their coaches, and coaches will find their ideal student. You know, surround yourself with people who believe in you. Now, the last point I wanted to make is from you, the people that I'm speaking to. I saw the power of community like I'd never seen it before. And during that race, I'd done something I'd never done before, but had seen others do many times. I fell. And it was an epic fall. On the 13.1 mile descent, it's steep, rocky, and the ground is loose under your feet. And tree roots seem to reach up to grab tired toes. And the unstable ground is trying to get you to slide out from under your feet. You know, rocks and boulders seem to shift under your weight just at the wrong time to throw you just a little bit off balance. And I was moving as fast as I felt comfortable. Slow. and my toe caught some unseen object that must have just protruded at that point from the ground, and I went head over heels. And I felt as though I was rolling in slow motion down the trail toward Manitou Springs. At one point, I had to straighten my body out and think, I better stop. I don't know where I'm going to end up because there's cliffs. You know, it's crazy. And in seconds, my son helped me to my feet as well as two other runners. And one man turned and asked me if I was hurt, or just embarrassed? And I said, embarrassed, as my face flushed. And he said, good, you'll get over that a lot quicker. Now keep going. And, I noticed that during the entire race, people looked out for each other and encouraged each other. And our name was on the bib, and everybody would pass you, would say your name out loud. And it seemed to, I don't know why, but having somebody say, way to go, Mark, it made you feel better just for that second. It made you feel noticed and important. On a mountain that's trying just the opposite. And it was fun how we all encouraged each other. Now, I'm sure the front runners weren't so nice to each other. They're all trying to figure out how to beat the other guy. But after the race, my son commented that his most notable observation of this demanding event was the care that people showed for each other during the race. And it is rather surprising. And the love was palpable. And in that it was grueling going up and punishing going down, most of us benefited from the positive encouragement of the other racers. In fact, you walk through town after and you're saying, hey, you're sort of keeping it up until you sort of lose the endorphin high or whatever it is, but it's fun. Ecclesiastes 4, 9 through 12 reminded me of this from the Message, and it said, it's better to have a partner than to go it alone. Share the work, share the wealth, and if one falls down, the other helps. But if there's no one to help, though, tough. Two in a bed warm each other. One alone, you shiver all night. By yourself, you're unprotected. With a friend, you can face the worst. Can you round up a third? A three-stranded rope isn't easily snapped. And that was by a great coach, written by a great coach named Solomon, who was really the coach to everybody. It's written in the Word. So, can you round up a third? Find somebody. Get at least one person who's on your team. Then maybe a third. You see? And you're going to start seeing everything start working better. If you can literally get one person with the same mindset that'll help you advance in whatever you want in your life, you will advance quicker. If you can get 3, oh my gosh, there's very little that's going to snap you out of that. And I liked how those 3 Olympians hung out together. Even though one was not a marathoner, they were a close group. They did things together. They drank together. They sang together. And in some way, they trained together. So beside running the entire race with my son, feeling each other's pain, me more than him, and crossing the finish line together, what touched me most was seeing the lovely faces of many of you at the finish. And it was surprisingly emotional. I didn't think I had that in me. And I also loved the many texts and emails that so many of you sent when I was reunited with my smartphone. Reunited, and it sounds so good. One of my son Adam's friends from New York City sent a text that made me laugh. Quote, "Oh man, in my mind, you're both feral dogs who drink motor oil from a can. You forage for your own food. True American badasses." End of quote. That's sort of how you feel when you finish the thing. I like that. Drink motor oil from a can. Junkyard dogs. I was calling my son V-Dog because he's a vegan. V-Dog. See, your love, your touch of community literally took my pain away when I saw your faces. And I thank you for that. Like every elite athlete, let's tailor our entire lifestyle in order to reach our most important goal, whatever it may be. Let's specialize in solving our own problems and surround ourselves with others who really believe in us. Let's spend less time talking and more time acting on our goals. And like from Laurent, I learned about being fully committed to reaching your own goal. Be fully committed to reaching your goal. From the Olympians, I learned the necessity of finding your coach for that season of your life, because they know it's just that little piece of time that they're going to be in the running. Laurent said, this is my last chance, because he's 35 or 37. This is it. So he put all his eggs in that basket to be called a world-renowned runner. These young Olympians, they're trying to make it to this next Olympics in 2 years. You see, so they're putting all their eggs into that basket. They all moved to Colorado Springs for the altitude and for the Olympic training facility. You see, find a coach who believes in you and who you can believe in. It's going to help you reach your goal. And lastly, and from you, I saw the amazing power of community believing. And don't ever think that it didn't make a difference, because it does make a difference to know people are in your corner. So that is my lesson from the marathon. God bless.